Hello, and welcome to Jason's Education Lounge podcast, brought to you by Think Academy. At Think Academy, we make learning across K-12 a fun, creative, and engaging experience. Every episode is a conversation with experts in education and education technology. We talk about learning beyond test scores and provide both educators and parents with solutions that work for their children. I'm your host, Jason. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jason's Education Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Jason. And today we're going to be talking about why we have decided to start this podcast focusing on education, a little bit about myself, what I do, why did I go into education, specifically why have I chosen to join an edtech company out of everything, despite that my university studies had nothing to do with education or technology. And some of my feelings of my career in a tech company, in an edtech company, my feelings towards growing up in a different country for myself, especially what that's like, and also going to uni, which is a very big shock for everyone. So I would like to use this opportunity to share my experience with everyone and to really talk about why we do what we do and why we think that this podcast is useful and important to a lot of the parents out there who are in a way lost or worried or stressed about their child's future. A little bit about myself. I'm Chinese. I was born in China. I went to kindergarten, primary school, all the way up to, I think it's about year 5 in the UK, in China. And then at age 10, my parents sent me to a boarding school here in the UK. And I always thought my maths was very average when I was in school. I never really had a subject that I absolutely excelled at, except for English, actually, because my parents wanted me to learn English from a very young age. I had an American teacher from California, and he used to teach me to correct my accent, to stop saying the usual accent that you would get from, for example, a Chinese native speaker. So when I first came to the UK, I had quite a strong American accent, and my teachers used to, in a very friendly way, joke about that. When I first came, I thought there wasn't going to be such a huge difference, because all through my life, I was very confident with speaking with foreigners in China. I was very confident with speaking with my teachers in English. And when we go on holidays abroad, I was always able to communicate without any barriers in that sense with people abroad. So I wasn't too worried when I first came to the UK at age 10, which I think was year 6, to take on what we now know as common entrance, which is 13 plus. However, it was a big shock after I came. I realized that my English was far behind. We haven't even touched on geography, history, chemistry, biology, and physics in separate senses back in China. And however, what really shocked me was my maths became my strongest subject. And it was a subject where I excelled at, not because I was very good at it, but because it's somewhere where language wasn't too much of a problem, especially technical language that is used in many other subjects. And that became one of my highlights in school. I remember I took a few competitions in school and I did very well. All of my other subjects, I was in the bottom set, besides my maths, which was in the top set. And that gave me a huge confidence boost. Even some of my friends, when they didn't know a question, they would come and ask me, how would I do it? And I would try to explain it which I thought at the time was pretty good English, but now I think about it, it's pretty broken. And I would explain it to them. And that in a way made me realize that math is a subject. It is a subject. And a lot of people think that, and I absolutely agree that we shouldn't focus too much on one subject. But math really is a bit more than that. It's more of a universal language, if you think about it. Because wherever you go, the methodology, the understanding, the logic behind each question, there is no language barrier and there's no culture barrier behind that. That's also something that really had to come to terms with, which is the culture, the humor. The British humor is notorious. So there's something that I have to come to terms with, not to take myself too seriously, which is guilty for someone of my background back then. And slowly as I go through my years, my English started to improve. I started to catch up on all the other subjects, and my maths, in the nicest way possible to my old school, that my maths stalled. I didn't move on any further because I was taught everything we were learning 2 or 3 years earlier in a school in China. So that kind of shows how, in a sense, that the UK education is a little behind for the same age for children doing their maths. I think, but it didn't bother me too much because I was able to socialize with my peers much better. I was a much happier person. I didn't have to be so shy anymore. I can show myself, and I made friends, and some of them I still keep in touch to this day, which is fantastic. So all in all, it was a great experience. But there is a huge, for anyone who is thinking about sending their child to a different country, you have to take into consideration the huge culture difference. And I think this is something that parents usually tend to ignore. And my parents did that as well. They ignored the huge culture impact that it may have on a child while he is trying to, in a way, fit in to a brand new environment with other pupils. And for me, I think the biggest blessing was that I came to the UK relatively young. And at a young age, a child's mind is very malleable. So I was able to fit in better than a lot of students that I met later on in life, which I'll mention. So I do hope parents who are listening would give their child a chance to really adapt and fit into the environment that you have sent them in. This is something that is very crucial. And yes, of course, culture affects someone's grade. And that's a very blunt statement, but let me explain. If your child is in a very comfortable position, in a very comfortable space, anyone in a comfortable space, i.e. their comfort zone, they will do much better because they're confident, they know what they're doing, etc. But when you take them out, it's like a bit like fish out of water. They're really going to struggle. And the weight of being different to other kids is going to weigh on them as they're trying to perform academically. So this is definitely something for parents to keep in mind, to give space. I remember when I first came, I had a few schools chosen in mind. Of course, the world-renowned Eton, Harrow being the two of them. I chose Abingdon as well, and a few others, and of course my school as well. And my parents really wanted me to go to Eton. That really was they were very adamant on going to Eton, because Eton is seen as a symbol or a beacon around the world, is where the most elite or the smartest kids go to. So I went to my Eton interview, I went to my Tunbridge interview, and whilst I was better prepared, I still felt that there was difficulty because it was so soon. It was almost 6 months after I came to the UK. I did my Eton entrance exams and Eton interviews. So that was a real struggle for me. But I was put on the waiting list, and my parents were absolutely relentless, because as long as there's still hope, they will try to push as hard as possible for me to get into that school. Unfortunately for them, unfortunately for me, that didn't pan out so well. I didn't go to Eton, which you can say is a blessing, and also if you're on their side, of course, is not so much. But I've come to terms with the fact that education is so much more than just about results. Of course, it is results driven. This is the world we're living. We have to be realistic. But to have a child that is well-rounded, independent, strong-minded, and determined is far more than just about having good results. And I think this can be shown very much through the friendships that your child makes, the sports that they do, the hobbies that they get into, the people that they talk to, the places that they go to. These are all very important things at a very relatively younger age, 13, 14. That's when I started to develop my character, who I am, who I want to be. And I started to realize what I want in life slowly. Of course, no one is sure at that age what you want in life, but you're slowly to have a sort of a picture of what you really want. So I think it's quite important to develop a much well-rounded experience at that age rather than just a subject focused. As I went into my secondary school, I forgot to mention that my prep school was a all-boys school. And when I went to my secondary school, I had no experience in talking to girls whatsoever. And that is something that still makes me laugh to this day, because I think in my first term, I was too enthusiastic about it, which I think, if you think about it, is funny for someone at that age and funny for someone who's been in a boys' school for 2 years and just gone into a mixed school for the first time. So I was very excited. And transitioning to secondary school, for sure, it's a big difference. It's a big difference, a much bigger school, much more responsibilities. You have to be much more independent. But at the same time, a good school will always provide the pastoral support that you need. This is when pastoral support from schools are so important. And I think when parents are choosing schools, this is something that you should absolutely look out for. There isn't an analogy I can use to describe pastoral support, but I think the most adequate way to describe it is, imagine you bought a tablet or an iPad and you're calling the customer support and no one's getting back to you. So I would say it's like that, but obviously far more serious. So you really want a school which would respond to you very quickly about how a child is doing, telling you how they're doing, the progress they make, because you're sending them away. You're sending them either to boarding school or day school into a much bigger environment. You want to be there to see their milestones. You want to be there for them when they're tired, when they're feeling sad. And this is when the school is so important at telling you, communicating with you, and helping your child through puberty, which is another fascinating time. And I started really taking sports quite seriously during my time in my secondary school. I pursued rugby, I did rowing, I tried cricket, really not my thing. And I took a really strong liking to rowing and to rugby. At the time, I was relatively tall for my age. I think I was the second tallest in my year out of 120 pupils. So I was quite happy to run over other pupils, fellow pupils on the rugby pitch. And on the rowing boat, it gave me an advantage because I had stronger levers in my legs and my arms, which gave me some of the best scores on the ergo machine. So I was very proud of that. And sports, really, team sports is something I think is also overlooked, because many pupils, and I'm talking for myself and to a lot of Chinese parents, or even some British parents, I assume, I'm an only child. And going to team sports is something that really helps your child to learn what is sharing the burden, is like. And when you have a responsibility, say winning a match, winning a game, you have to put trust in your teammates that they will also do their best. You have to put trust in yourself that you won't let your teammates down. This is something I feel very strongly about. And I think I have been, in a way, eye-opened as I did team sports, because that was something that I've never done before. I always put the responsibility of doing something, winning something, getting something by myself. And I think sharing that burden and sharing the happiness and sharing the reward at the end is so much more powerful, so much more happy than when you do it yourself, because you have other people to share that success with. It is absolutely fantastic. And as I go through my secondary school, I realized that, and by the way, at this point, my math is still good, but there's nothing to rave about anymore. I've taken a liking into English literature. I've taken a liking into history, into philosophy. I remember theology and philosophy, yeah. So I really focus more on language-based subjects and theory-based subjects as well. And this is very much to my parents' surprise, because from what they know and from what their friends' children are doing, everyone is very talented at maths and very talented at this physics, at chemistry, at the sciences, because this is essentially what the Chinese education do for you. As you leave China, your math instantly becomes your strongest asset. And almost it's a double-edged sword, because whilst you're very good at maths, at the same time, you are in a way neglecting everything else that makes you whole. So it's really a double-edged sword. You're able to do a lot with maths, but not everything. So I spoke to my parents about I want to choose language-based subjects for my A-levels, and they were very surprised. They said I should choose maths instead because it's much easier to get help if I need it. But I insisted that my interest was in politics, economics, and English. So they decided to let me take those 3 subjects, and I really did. I took interest in politics in 2015, just before the Brexit vote. What an interesting time. And I used to watch David Cameron and Ed Miliband on the Prime Minister's Questions every Wednesday to debate each other at the time. And I would watch all the election debates back in the time, Nicola Sturgeon, Nick Clegg, all these people on stage. And I love listening to those. Sometimes I would listen to those in bed and I would fall asleep listening to debates. So I was very interested in politics, and that's why I eventually chose politics later on. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I was so different from other, and I hate to be stereotypical, other Chinese students in a way, is when I first came, not in a very malicious way, stayed away from Chinese speaking groups. And the reason for that is because I felt that my parents paid 30-odd thousand pounds to send me to the UK, and for me to learn English, for me to learn the culture, for me to assimilate. But if I were to talk to my, Chinese counterparts, I think I'll be wasting that money, wasting that effort, and I would not make the most out of my education here in the UK. And I think, and also when I first came, there were a few kids who I shan't name, who used to tease me about my accent, which was a mix of an American and Chinese accent at the time. And I would watch shows, I would read books, I would watch TV shows, I would pause when I hear something that I want to correct on and to improve my accent, to improve my English speaking. Because I always knew I was a visual and audio learner rather than from reading books. So that's what I did. And I think that was the beginning of my interest in English literature, in politics, and so on and so forth. That really put down the foundation of what I wanted to do in my A-levels. And after my A-levels, I chose international relations and politics for my bachelor's degree, and I went into anthropology for my master's degree. So none of the footpaths of what you would expect of my background, so to say, a stereotypical background, but I'm proud of what I did. I think it was a fantastic opportunity. And as I think is one of my greatest assets in my company, to understand both cultures, I think is a huge asset for myself. I really do enjoy it. And as I finished my master's degree, this is a story that I would love to tell everybody because I think it's very funny. After my master's degree, I wanted to take a break. I wanted to relax. I wanted to go see the world, go see what the world is like, because I've been bodged up in my master's studies and bachelor studies for a while. And I decided to travel. I went to Maldives in April, and then Morocco in May. And then in June, on my way to Thailand, at the lounge at the airport, I was in the bathroom and I suddenly got a call. And I thought, gosh, who is this call? I don't really pick up calls that I don't know. So I saw this number and I was in the toilet and I thought, I'm not going to pick it up. So I hung up. And then this number called again. So I thought this person must really want me. So I picked up. And this lady says something, Pink Academy. I thought, what on earth is that? Where the hell did I put my CV? Because I was looking for a job at the time whilst I was traveling. I thought, what on earth is Pink Academy? And later on, as he spoke, I was very polite. I answered everything, I think, in the best way possible. I didn't want to be rude. And the lady said, would you like to do an online Zoom session? The first interview via Zoom. I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So she said, let's do Monday at 1:00 GMT. So I said, okay, great, I'll do that. As Monday came, I've totally forgotten about I had an interview with Pink Academy. As I was in the hot tub in Thailand, and it was 12:56. And I thought, gosh, I must have something. I have something to do. I just don't remember what it is. And a friend reminded me, oh, Jason, don't you have that interview? I said, oh gosh, yeah, should I even do it? What kind of company is Pink Academy? And I decided, sure, yeah, why not, as an interview experience. So I spoke to the lady who called me, and she was there, and we had a great interview, actually. It was fantastic. She explained what a Think Academy does, and I finally knew it was Think Academy, not Pink Academy. And she asked me why. She was the first person that asked me, why do I want to go into education? And at the time, I had this very non-mainstream idea about education. Because it's such a difficult subject or a difficult industry to define what is actually good education, what is bad education. There isn't a statistical thing that you can see as non-tangible. It is definitely something that is, first of all, long-term, and you have to see the child through an extended period of time. It's definitely long-term, and there's nothing to measure what is a good or bad education. So when she asked me, I just came to my mind. I remembered when I used to help other people back in the day, help them with the math questions, and I felt a sense of reward after helping other people. And that's the answer I gave. I said I felt very rewarded after helping other people with their maths, and I would love to. I would love to do it. I would love to try it if you will let me. I was like, she said, sure. Why don't you come in to have a trial, to explain a few questions to our teachers and see if you do well? I thought, oh, this is going to be easy peasy. How hard can it be? How difficult can it be? So she said, I'll send you the questions. I said, sure, great. And I have time to prepare. I don't have to do it on the spot. So everything was great. I came back. I was much more tanned than when I had the interview. I came back and I prepared the question, which wasn't too hard. I went into the office, and suddenly, as all the teachers sat down to listen to my interview as a question, almost all of a sudden I froze, because I haven't explained a question in front of a class or explained a question to someone in so long. So that really affected my performance. But luckily at the time, my manager really liked the way that I presented myself. So he said, everything else is trainable, but there's a few attributes that's very difficult to train. And number one is your self-confidence. And number two is projection and the way that you present yourself, the eloquence of the language. So I thought, oh, fantastic. Maybe I'm cut out for this. Maybe I will do great. And we had a 3-hour conversation about the future in education, about education technology. And suddenly I realized this is a whole new world that I never understood. There's a whole new world that I never knew existed before I spoke to my manager at the time. And it was really eye-opening. So after he spoke to me, I said, of course I would join if you'll have me. He said, you'll suit very well. So that's how I got my first job into education, which I've stayed for nearly, I think, 2 years now. And afterwards, as I was supposed to teach GCSE maths. But unfortunately, after the first few days, they realized that my maths wasn't good enough to teach even year fives in the competition questions. So there were two options, either to fire me straight away or they can try me into something else. And my manager gave me another chance. He put me into marketing. I thought, what the hell? I would just try it. I had no clue what I had to do. I would learn everything on the spot, how to use Canva, how to make a PowerPoint properly, how to promote something, how to use SEO on Google. My university degree was never about marketing. So that was very interesting. And the thing that really, I think, won my manager over about me was because I grew up in the UK, I never had the thought of, okay, I have to stay in the office so long to impress someone. I always thought to myself, I would always finish what I was assigned to do that day, and I'll never leave it to the next day. Doesn't matter what time I get off, doesn't matter what time I go in. That was my philosophy. So at the time, and I hope Think Academy won't blame me for this, but we were paid £10 an hour at the time for, I think, 10 hours a day. And I went in at 9 and left at 11, half 11, 12, a lot of days, almost 3 or 4 times a week I would do that. And I would go in on the weekends to continue to finish projects I didn't do during the week. And that's no reason other than just so that I was able to keep up with the workload, not to impress anyone, not to do anything like that, just to keep up with the workload. And after a few weeks of talking to everyone, they suddenly realized I had a knack for, in a way, teaching, but also talking. And that's when I think my greatest professional achievement came. I was put in charge to manage a TikTok account. And that TikTok account, the purpose of it was to figure out how to create a following with a TikTok algorithm. With any account, you can do whatever you like, but just how to figure out how to grow a following. I said, great. In that case, I'll teach English since there's a huge basis. It's very broad what you can teach with English. So I'll teach English. And I had training from another colleague. She taught me a lot about what they found out about the TikTok algorithm. And one thing that she really told me really helped was whenever you see a TikTok video, if you put your hands on the right side to cover up the likes, the shares, the saves, and then you look at the video and you determine yourself to see if that video is viral or not, to make your mind aware and sensitive of what a viral video should look like. And after that, I was almost never wrong. I always look at every 10 videos, I probably get 1 or 2 wrong. And most of them, they were very accurate. So I figured out I have a good knack for this. And then I started to film my videos to using the logic and structure and understanding that I gained from watching so many TikTok videos to start my own videos. And that was a great help. And within a week, we were at 160,000 followers within 1 week. And that's completely organic. And then within 4 or 5 weeks, we're at 400,000 followers. So that was really quite a feat. And I'm still very proud of myself for that. I started my first video in August 11th. I still remember very clearly. I posted my first video on August 11th, 2022. And by December 2022, I reached 1.5 million followers. It was one of the greatest achievements in my professional career. And my company really enjoyed doing that. And they started to talk to me more about what we do, about education, about technology, about accessible technology. What is accessible technology? How does technology nowadays affect education? Those are the things that really hit me very strongly, because if we think about it, education, like high street retail, is one of the industries that hasn't changed for centuries. And people still go into shops to shop around. That's the same experience. Students still go to school with a teacher teaching with a whiteboard. The ways we teach, so for example, we have iPads and stuff like that these days, but the mode of teaching, so the way that the teacher talks and the child listens, or other one, has not changed. It's still the same method as always. So, and I wondered, and I still wonder, because it's a really tough question to think about at the beginning of your career. And I wonder why that is, and why is education, even now, all the governments around the world, still a one-size-fits-all solution. Recently, I went to the Inclusive Education Forum at UNESCO in Paris, the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. And they talked about what is inclusive education and what is exclusive education. I spoke there and I said, one of the things that I always wonder is, why is it that when we go out to buy clothes, to, for example, buy a suit, we can have a suit that measures every arm, measures every bicep, your chest measurement, your waist measurements. You have a perfect suit that fits your body. But something as important as education, there's nothing that remotely come close to the level of customization that you get when you buy a suit. So that is something that is a problem at the moment. It has to be solved because, like I said, there cannot be, every child is unique, and there cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. And one of the things that I realized my company is doing, and we have invested over £200 million into AI and into tech, we have realized that artificial intelligence is the cheapest way and the best way to provide a personalized education experience and growth for every child. And this is something we have already put into practice, and we have seen great results. Once you have done a test, we have a tablet. By the way, this is not a sales pitch, but it's very cool. We have a tablet where once you do a test, for example, you're doing an English test, the system will be able to tell you what you need to work on. It can look at your sentences, count the number of mistakes that you made. It knows what type of mistakes that you made, and it will generate a full-on study plan for you to do, for you to follow, like a personalized workout plan for you to follow to improve your weaknesses. And I think this is pretty cool. If we can all do that for every child in all the subjects, it would be a totally different result coming out of it. And our pupils are absolutely loving it. They really do. And it takes a lot of pressure off teachers as well. You can take a picture with a tablet with your homework, and the tablet will mark it automatically, even if it's written. It'll find out where you put a marker, which letters, which sentences you've written wrong, and it will mark it for you. And the teacher simply ticks approve, and the process is done. So teachers don't actually have to go through everything, which saves a lot of time and effort for them as well. So that really is something that is what technology can do, what AI can do these days is absolutely incredible. And to continue a little bit, because I think my life story really explains where we are now and what we are trying to do. As I continued, I was promoted to be the head of public relations for our branch in the UK, and which I had to talk to a lot of different schools, a lot of different groups, a lot of different education groups, parents, students, etc., etc. And again, there's no other ways to describe this other than eye-opening, because previously we've done this from the side of an educator. I've looked at the perspective from the eyes of an educator. But now, once I went into public relations, I looked through the eyes of a parent, of a child, of a school, of a headmaster. And that is a totally different perspective. What parents want for their child, what schools want for their children, and the differences between private sector and the state sector in the UK specifically, how different they are and the gap in between. And you do have a lot of fantastic teachers in the state sector that really tries really hard, but because of restraints, that they're unable to provide the best possible resources as they can. And I think that's where, if we come in as a sort of, not as a replacement, I never would think of it as a replacement, but as a sort of a help to help them run the way that they like to run more efficiently, to save time for the teachers as well. That would be great. And from the parents' perspective, you usually get two types of parents. One type of parent is someone who is very focused on what they think that the child should do and what they think that the child is good at. The second type of parent is much more relaxed. Leave everything up for the child to decide. If the child wants, I want to go learn play football, go play football. I want to do math, go do maths. There isn't really too much pressure. And I'm not going to say which results are best, because there are always anomalies when you look at these, and these are long-term outcomes. I think you and I both would know which one's happier in the end. And I think with a AI-powered tool, parents can much easier find out what their child is good at, what they need to work on, and if their child is really interested in that subject or they're just simply pretending. So this is, again, something that I had my eyes opened in a major way. And this podcast really is about eye-opening things. I think, again, I'm using that word a lot, because the people that we are trying to, or we're going to invite onto this podcast, are some of the most brilliant minds in education, educators, teachers, mathematicians, in a way, influencers in the field of study. And definitely they will offer a fresh new perspective even I myself hasn't seen. And I hope it would be a great help to a lot of parents to go through a period where I can only imagine, because I don't have a child yet, as a very confusing period for someone who's going through this the first time. So I hope this podcast is, in a way, a beacon where you can look to for help, look to for answers as well. So this is exactly what we're trying to do. And I really hope that from what I've shared with everyone on this episode, this first episode, just talking about myself, that you can understand that my passion behind education, my love for this, and from my own experience as well to share with all of you, to help you all. We'll hope everyone tune into our episodes, because every time we really try to invite the best of the best. So to provide, again, eye-opening things. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope this has been useful to everyone to get to know me a little bit better, why we're doing this, how we're doing this, etc., etc. And I hope to see you guys soon in our future episodes. Bye. That wraps up this episode of Jason's Education Lounge podcast. A shout out to our parent company, Think Academy, a company that provides world-class online and in-person education programs for K-12 students. We're proud to be different, results-driven, and focused on the specific learning needs of your child. Check out our website at www.thinkacademy.uk. And a big shout out to Fame for making this podcast possible. Thank you for listening, folks. Stick around for more insights in our next episode. Catch you later.